Namaskar. Good evening, viewers. You're watching Sansad TV's live broadcast at 9 p.m. This is The News with me, Bhawna Nayar. Over the next 30 minutes, we bring you a roundup of all national and international news that you need to know. First up, the top 5 headlines we are tracking this hour. Vice presidential election tomorrow. NDA candidate Jagdeep Dhankar to face opposition candidate Margaret Alva. Counting of votes after voting concludes. No privileges for MPs in criminal matters, clarifies our Rajya Sabha chairman Venkaiah Naidu. Both houses discuss private members' bills. Congress holds demonstrations against inflation, unemployment. Many Congress leaders, including Rahul and Priyanka Gandhi, detained. BJP says protest aimed at saving Gandhi family. Reserve Bank hikes repo rate by 0.5%, estimates retail inflation to touch 6.7% in current financial year. And China imposes sanctions on Nancy Pelosi. Continues massive military exercise near Taiwan. US Parliament Speaker meets Japanese Prime Minister. After the top headlines, let us now look at some more important news of the day. Railways to provide 1,40,000 job opportunities soon. Recruited over 3.5 lakh people in last 8 years. Over 285 lakh metric tons of wheat stock available in central pool. Government informs Rajya Sabha. ISRO to launch Earth observation satellite and Azadi Sat designed by 750 girl students on Sunday. District courts and high courts heard 1 crore 92 lakh cases till April using video conferencing since COVID lockdown. India power sufficient. Villages getting nearly 20 hours of power supply, says Union Minister R.K. Singh. Stresses need to cut dependence on imports to meet energy targets by 2030. Indian Navy's all-women crew creates history, completes first independent maritime surveillance mission over Arabian Sea. DRDO test fires indigenously developed laser-guided anti-tank guided missiles from main battle tank Arjun. Second phase of CUET UG 2022 marred by glitches. National Testing Agency fails to upload question papers. 50,000 unable to take exam. Re-exam likely between August 12th and 14th. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida says Chinese military exercises aimed at Taiwan a serious problem for regional peace and security. And US declares the monkeypox outbreak a public health emergency. Cases top 6,600. And now the top story of the day. Election for the new Vice President of India will be held on Saturday. Voting will be held in Parliament House from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. All preparations for the voting have been completed. Jagdeep Dhankar is the BJP-led NDA's Vice Presidential candidate, while the opposition parties have fielded Margaret Alva. Polling will be held in room number 63 on the first floor in the Parliament House. Just as in the presidential election, no political party can issue a whip for voting in the vice president's election. Votes will be counted the same day and the result will be declared soon after. Sansad TV will bring you a special coverage of the vice presidential election. Now, the monsoon session updates. The Competition Amendment Bill 2022 was introduced in Lok Sabha by Minister of State for Corporate Affairs Rao Indrajit Singh. Also in the lower house, BJP MP Varun Gandhi introduced a non-government bill to outline measures to provide jobs to Indians in central government departments and undertakings. Apart from this, other MPs also introduced private bills. Union Health and Family Welfare Minister Mansukh Mandavia responded to the Right to Health Bill 2021 during private members' business in the Rajya Sabha on Friday. He said he agreed with RJD MP Manoj Jha, who introduced the bill, that every citizen has the right to get better health facilities. Mandavia said it was the government's emphasis on health that enabled it to get the COVID vaccine in time, not only for Indians but also for other countries.
मैं स्वाभाविक तौर पर ये मानता हूँ कि हेल्थ एक ऐसा सब्जेक्ट है और मनोज भाई का और सम्मानित सभी सदस्यों की बात का एक सुर निकलता है कि लोगों को हेल्थ केयर अच्छी तरह से मिलनी चाहिए, यानी कि हेल्थ केयर एक्सेसिबल होनी चाहिए और हेल्थ केयर एफोर्डेबल होनी चाहिए, ताकि एक लास्ट तबक्के के लोगों को भी कोई ऐसे व्यक्ति ना हो कि जिसको ट्रीटमेंट की सुविधा ना हो.
Earlier, various parties stressed the need to increase expenditure on health in view of the cost of treatment. The members suggested that health should be made a fundamental right.
What we need is a revisit of our health policies. Then for that, we have to spend more on health. At least 6-7% of the GDP must be spent on healthcare.
जेनरिक दवाइयों की बेटर प्राइस मिलना शुरू हुआ है, उसी प्रकार से मेडिकल इक्विपमेंट्स को भी बेटर प्राइस पे मिला है, काफ़ी प्राइसेस घटाई गई हैं.
Moving on, Rajya Sabha Chairman M. Venkaiah Naidu said on Friday that while members of the upper house have some privileges in civil matters, they have no such privileges in criminal matters. He made these remarks in the wake of the opposition's allegations of misusing central agencies to target opposition party leaders. The chairman said that this is also mentioned in Section A of Section 135 of the Civil Procedure Code. He said,
cannot be arrested in a civil case 40 days before the commencement of the session or committee meeting and 40 days thereafter. This privilege already incorporated under Section 135A of the Civil Procedure Code 1909. However, in criminal matters, members of parliament are not on a different footing than a common citizen.
Moving on to another big headline of the day, the RBI increased its repo rate by 0.5% to 5.4% to control retail inflation. Repo rate is the rate at which banks take loans from the central bank to meet their immediate fund requirements. In effect, it will increase EMIs for consumer loans. The RBI policy rate has been increased for the third time in a row. In all, the repo rate has been raised by 1.4% in 2022-23. The Monetary Policy Committee also decided to focus on withdrawing the soft policy stance. RBI Governor Shaktikant Das said the Indian economy is battling high inflation and it is necessary to bring it under control. RBI has retained the inflation forecast at 6.7%.
Accordingly, the MPC decided to increase the policy repo rate by 50 basis points to 5.4%. The MPC also decided to remain focused on withdrawal of accommodation to ensure that inflation remains within the target going forward while supporting growth.
Now let's move on to the stories that are making news in the nation. The Rajya Sabha will bid farewell to Chairman M. Venkaiah Naidu. Deputy Chairman Harivansh announced on Monday. Naidu's term ends on August 10th.
Honorable members, as you all are aware, Sri M. Venkaiah Naidu ji, Honorable Chairman, Rajya Sabha, will be demitting office on 10th of August 2022. The House will be bidding farewell to him on Monday, the 8th of August 2022. Accordingly, there will be no 0 hour or on that day.
Telangana Rashtra Samiti has decided to support opposition candidate Margaret Alva in the vice presidential election. West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee met Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Delhi. The two leaders held discussion on various issues. Jammu and Kashmir Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha has said that it will be a social security scheme, e-governance or startups. Jammu and Kashmir has come a long way in every field. In the last 7 months, over 1 crore 10 lakh tourists have visited Jammu and Kashmir. Registration for Agniveer recruitment for Army in Jammu and Kashmir has begun. The last date for registration is 3rd September. Candidates can only apply online by logging on to the official website of Army, www.joinindianarmy.nic.in. Former Congress President Rahul Gandhi criticized the centre over inflation, unemployment and social situation. Referring to the Enforcement Directorate's action against his family, he said, the Gandhi family is being targeted for its ideological stand.
महंगाई के मुद्दे उठाना चाहते हैं, बेरोजगारी का मुद्दा उठाना चाहते हैं, जो समाज को बांटा जा रहा है उसके बारे में हम चर्चा करना चाहते हैं, यहां करना चाहते हैं, पार्लियामेंट हाउस में करना चाहते हैं.
Party General Secretary Priyanka Gandhi, who joined the Congress protest against inflation and unemployment, sat on a dharna after the police stopped her from taking out a march towards the Prime Minister's residence. She was briefly detained. Meanwhile, the BJP hit back at the Congress over the protest. Union Minister Amit Shah said the Congress chose this day for protest to further promote their appeasement politics. He alleged that they wore black clothes on a day that marks the foundation laying of Ram Janambhoomi by Prime Minister Modi.
ईडी, महंगाई, ये सभी बहाने हैं. आज सभी लोग बड़े से बड़े नेता से लेकर छोटे से छोटे कार्यकर्ता तक सारे कांग्रेसी काले कपड़े पहनकर आए थे. प्रच्छन्न रूप से उन्होंने एक संदेश भेजने का प्रयास किया है कि राम जन्मभूमि का जो शिलान्यास हुआ वो और अब जो भव्य मंदिर बनने जा रहा है, दोनों के साथ हमारा विरोध है और हम इसी के लिए प्रदर्शन कर रहे हैं.
And now let's take a look at how nation is faring under monsoon today. Heavy rains were seen in southern districts of Kerala on Friday. The weather department issued an orange alert for 8 northern state districts. It forecast heavy rainfall for Idukki, Thrissur, Palakkad, Malappuram, Kozhikode, Wayanad, Kannur and Kasaragod districts. School and educational institutions had a holiday in many districts in view of the heavy rains. 3 reservoirs of Mullaperiyar will be opened in Kerala to release excess water. The water in Chalakudi River in Thrissur is above 7.27 meters. Rains continue to lash many parts of Rajasthan today. In the last 24 hours, the highest rainfall of 11 centimeters was recorded in Kushalgarh in Banswara. The weather department has issued a warning of light to moderate rain in most parts of the state and heavy rain in some parts in the coming days. And continuing with more news, Home Minister Amit Shah launched Doordarshan's mega historical Hindi serial Swaraj, the stories of India's freedom struggle in Delhi. This 75-episode series will highlight untapped aspects of the glorious history of India's freedom struggle. Home Minister Amit Shah said the series is aimed at making Indians proud of their culture, values and ancient texts. He urged the youth to take pride in the ancient culture and history of the country.
महान भारत कैसा होगा उसकी रचना के संकल्प भी ले रहे हैं और संकल्प की सिद्धि के लिए पुरुषार्थ का प्रचंड विश्वास भी व्यक्त कर. इसलिए आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव हमारे देश के लिए बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है और मैं मानता हूं कि भारत यहां से जो छलांग लगाने वाला है उसके बाद भारत को महान बनने से कोई नहीं रोक सकता. इस दिशा में हम आगे बढ़ेंगे.
And now news from the world of business and economy. The government approved exports of an additional 1.2 million tons of sugar following requests from stakeholders to permit shipment of stocks piled up in ports and warehouses. A notification to the effect would be issued shortly. Piped cooking gas became costlier in Delhi NCR with prices hiked by Rs 2.6 to Rs 50.6 per unit. Indraprasth Gas Limited, the firm that supplies CNG to automobiles and piped cooking gas in Delhi, said rise in input cost had led to the hike. Rates of the piped cooking gas have now jumped by more than 70% as compared to July 2021. At the end of a volatile session on a day the RBI raised key interest rates, BSE Sensex closed with marginal gains of 89 points, while NSE Nifty went up by 15 points. Ultratech Cement made strong gains of 2.86%. IT stocks including Wipro and Infosys also performed well. Asian markets were on a roll with Taiwan, Shanghai and Nikkei 225 gaining up to 2%. European and US stocks declined with losses of up to 1%. Meanwhile, Pakistan's finance minister warned of bad days ahead for the battered economy, expressing discontent with the state's exploding current account deficits. Pakistan has long been waiting for a bailout package from the International Monetary Fund, which has remained elusive so far. Slipping into a short break here on the other side, Bank of England warns of recession by the year end. All this and much more. Stay tuned to Sansad TV for more news.
आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव हम सभी के लिए बड़ी प्रसन्नता का विषय है कि आज़ादी को 75 वर्ष बीतने के बाद अमृत महोत्सव के रूप में हम लोग इसको मनाने का काम कर रहे हैं और प्रधानमंत्री जी ने आह्वान किया है कि घर घर झंडा लगा करके इसका उत्सव मनाने का काम किया जाए। मैं इसके प्रति केवल इतना ही कहना चाहता हूँ, हर हर गंगा घर घर तिरंगा। धन्यवाद।
Welcome back after the break. You're watching the news and time now for more stories from across the globe. The Bank of England projected on Thursday that the United Kingdom's economy will enter a recession at the end of the year as it hiked interest rates by the largest amount in more than 27 years. Here's a report.
A rate hike of 3/4 of a point by the Bank of England pushes its key interest rate to 1.75%, the highest since the global financial crisis in December 2008. The move looks to tame galloping consumer prices driven by soaring energy costs as Russia restricts natural gas to Europe. It also said that UK's economy will enter a recession at the end of the year. The bleak outlook in the world's fifth largest economy shows the ripple effects of the war. It also highlights the difficult position that central banks worldwide are facing. How to control surging inflation without tipping economies into recession that are recovering from the coronavirus pandemic. In the UK, inflation will accelerate to over 13% in the final 3 months of the year and remain very elevated for much of 2023, the bank said. The bank's forecasters say inflation will hit its highest point for more than 42 years amid the doubling of wholesale natural gas prices tied to the war. Those energy prices will push the economy into a 5-quarter recession, with gross domestic product shrinking each quarter in 2023. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
US House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi concluded her Asia tour with a visit to Japan. In Tokyo, she said China will not be able to isolate Taiwan by preventing US officials from traveling to Taiwan. More details in this report.
US House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi met her Japanese counterpart Hiroyuki Hosoda in Tokyo on Friday. Pelosi's meeting with Hosoda comes as she praised Taiwan, pledged US solidarity and said her trip through Asia was never about changing the regional status quo in a news conference. In retaliation, China on Thursday cancelled a foreign ministers' meeting with Japan, scheduled on the sidelines of ASEAN ministerial meetings in Phnom Penh to protest a statement from the group of 7 nations over Taiwan. A foreign ministry spokesperson told reporters in Beijing that it was because the G7, including Japan, issued an irresponsible statement that supports the US behavior of infringing on China's sovereignty. Meanwhile, the Chinese People's Liberation Party conducted real combat drills of unprecedented scale in the sea and airspace around the Taiwan island on Thursday. China sent about 100 fighter jets and bombers to the northern, southwestern and southeastern airspace of the Taiwan island. More than 10 destroyers and frigates have been continuously deployed in the waters around the Taiwan island to give warnings in the firing test area. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
Time to take a look at more stories from around the globe. Cambodia's Foreign Minister Park Sukhon chaired the 29th Asean Summit. He advocated for the summit's role in confidence building and preventive diplomacy amid tensions between Taiwan, China and the United States. He said ASEAN has so far enabled all to avoid an explosive situation and maintain relative peace and stability. Russia and China's foreign ministers met on the sidelines of ASEAN Foreign Ministers Summit in Cambodia. The Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi confirmed that both countries had a high-level nature of strategic partnership and appreciated Russia's stand on one China principle. Lavrov accused the United States of violating the principles of the United Nations Charter and suppressing independence after Pelosi's Taiwan visit. The Israeli military is sending additional forces to the Gaza Strip as it braces for possible attacks. Israel fears retaliatory attack after the arrest of a senior militant in the West Bank this week. Authorities have closed the roads and other areas around Gaza after a raid in which a senior member of the Islamic Jihad militant group was arrested in the West Bank town of Jenin. South Korea is the latest to join the list of nations that have sent an orbiter to the moon. South Korea launched a lunar orbiter Danuri, Korean for the Enjoy the Moon, that will scout out future landing spots. The satellite was launched by SpaceX and is taking a long path to conserve fuel and will arrive in December. The cost of the mission is $180 million. 10 people were trapped in a coal mine after their excavation work caused a tunnel wall to collapse, triggering flooding in 3 wells. The incident happened on Wednesday and the rescue operations are still underway. Mexican President AMLO said the state and federal governments were working together to help free the miners. Several hundred local and federal officials are responding to the accident to rescue the trapped miners. Moving ahead, parts of the Great Barrier Reef have recorded their highest amount of coral cover since the Australian Institute of Marine Sciences AIMS began monitoring 36 years ago. Studies have shown that average hard coral cover in the upper region and central areas of the reef increased by around 1/3. Here's a report.
Two-thirds of Australia's Great Barrier Reef has shown the largest amount of coral cover in 36 years. Although the reef still remains vulnerable to increasingly frequent mass bleaching. In its annual report released on Thursday, the Australian Institute of Marine Sciences said it has found a significant recovery in the central and northern stretches of the UNESCO Heritage listed site. Australian Institute of Marine Sciences defined hard coral cover of more than 30% as high value based on its long-term survey of the reef. On the northern region, average hard coral cover grew to 36% in 2022 from a low of 13% in 2017. In the central region, hard coral cover increased to 33% from a low of 12% in 2019. However, in the southern region, which generally has higher hard coral cover, it fell to 34% in 2022 from 38% a year earlier. On the downside, the growth in the coral cover has been driven by acropora corals, which institutes say are particularly vulnerable to the wave damage, heat stress and crown of thorns starfish. Still, the recovery comes after the 4th mass bleaching in 7 years and is the first recorded during a La Nina event, which typically brings cooler temperatures. Bureau Report, Sunset TV.
And time now for all the sporting action. Para powerlifter Sudhir scripted a Commonwealth Games record to win a gold medal in the men's heavyweight final. Sudhir lifted 212 kg and scripted a Games record with his total of 134.5 points. Murali Sri Shankar bagged a historic silver in men's long jump with an attempt of 8.08 meters at the CWG. Mohammad Anis Yahya finishes 5th. Kidambi Srikanth and PV Sindhu reach quarter-finals of men's and women's singles badminton draw. Both shuttlers have easy straight games win in the pre-quarter-finals. India advanced to the final of men's 4x400 meter relay after finishing second in Heat 2. 4 Indian wrestlers to fight for gold medals at Commonwealth Games tonight. Anshu Malik in women's 57 kg, Sakshi Malik in women's 62 kg, as well as Bajrang Punia in men's 65 kg category and Deepak Punia in men's 86 kg reach finals. And that's a wrap of today's Bulletin The News. Thank you for watching. Good night. Namaskar.